attack warm-up. So even after the monster gets up to the player and wants to swing his club, we prevent him from doing that for a very small period of time. And we also add a run-stop movement. So even when the monster is running directly at the player, we force him to stop occasionally. So as you can see, this player is actually able to really create some space, kind of micro these guys a little bit more, and really we reward the player for moving. We reward the player for playing an action game. So layering on top of that a little bit, some other stuff that we can do. We can add a taunt, so you look at some of the guys in the back are kind of slamming their clubs or raising their shields. Gives a little bit of an opportunity for us to give them character. Also, we introduced the concept of running near the player as opposed to directly at them. So sort of give you the sense of threat as opposed to like a direct threat all the time. And then also we can add things that are like classic Fallen behaviors, like fleeing when your allies get killed. So let's put this all together in a more realistic game situation. Here's the Demon Hunter again, except we've given her Entangling Shot, we've given her Multi-Shot, and put also a ton of Fallen on the other side. And you can see the player's able to create some space. The player's able to really control the situation. I mean, she feels awesome. This feels awesome for the player. This is really what we want out of the Diablo combat experience.
Hi, my name is Christian Leitner. I'm the art director, and I'm going to walk you guys through tools of instruction. So customization is a huge part in Diablo 3. We're really trying to push that a lot and give the player a lot of choices, so you guys have a lot of interesting things you guys can do to your characters. And this obviously starts, first of all, with our armor sets. And what you're seeing here is one of the little bit more advanced armor sets for the Barbarian. In the background, you can actually see the concept that started this armor set. And that was done by our very own Josh Tallman here on our panel. And what we're trying to do when we design these armor sets initially is that we're really trying to come up with a lot of variety. We're trying to make sure that it is very distinct for the class. This is an armor set obviously for the Barbarian. It's a little bit more ornate than maybe you would expect from a Barbarian, but it still feels very much like it would be a Barbarian. He's got cut off elephant heads on his shoulders, if you notice that. And at this stage, really, a lot of the things we really pay a lot of attention to is that while we want to give you guys a lot of choices, we also want to make sure that it still feels very much like the class. Here's another armor set that we have for the Witch Doctor. And again, you can see the scary mask concept that was initially done for this in the background. And in the foreground, you actually see the 3D model that's in-game. Again, very specific to the Witch Doctor, feels like the Witch Doctor, and it's just something that really gives you that flavor for that class. Again, it's very important that we keep the flavor going. Another thing that's very, very important on these character sets is silhouette. We want to make sure that from the game cam, it reads really, really well. In this case, you can see the big headdress, these spider legs sort of sticking out of the helmet. It's very iconic of the Witch Doctor, but it also reads really, really well. You want to be able to see who's wearing what armor set when you're playing with your friends, co-op online, and really have fun with that. Another example would be this. Again, this is a Barb armor set. You can see the shoulder pads are really strong. They define the silhouette really, really strongly. And again, you probably won't miss him when he's running past you in a dungeon. Another thing is to, every once in a while, we try to push the envelope a little bit. The Witch Doctor is a good opportunity for that. We look around and we sort of get ideas for what we could do with a class that would maybe push an interest level or the particular thing that really epitomizes this class a little bit more. In this case, we had this crazy idea from our concept team that what if the armor moved? What if it had these sort of like these tentacles on the shoulders and on the headrest that would actually be moving? So what you see is a concept on the bottom there, or on the left, excuse me, and the 3D model on the right. And we actually built it. It's one of our favorite sets. And in motion, actually ended up looking like this. Yeah. So you can see it's really creepy looking, and again, it's going to look really great from game cam as you're playing this stuff. Of course, what's all this epic armor without epic icons?
Nothing.
Yes. Mike does our icons. So what you can see here is the icons actually match, obviously, the 3D model. So as you put your icons on the paper doll, it will show up on the 3D model to the left. What's nice about this too is that the different looks for the armor sets actually match across the classes. What I mean by this is the exact same armor set on the wizard as it is on the barb, and on the barb you can see the icons matching the barb set, and on the wizard it matches the wizard set. So it's very nice because there's no disconnection between putting the armor on the character and what it actually ends up looking like on the character. That's another improvement we did over Diablo 2, and we sort of pushed the envelope a little bit further on Diablo 3. Another thing is that we're giving the players to do is customization, and we really feel like this is something that we're very proud of. Yeah. We want to give you guys as many choices as possible. In this particular case, you see the female wizard. On every armor set, you're going to have a slot that you can dye to a color that you prefer. The dyes you can pick up in the world, either craft or buy, or maybe do drops. Now, the interesting thing about this, too, is that some dyes are more rare than others. So, in this case, you probably could get like maybe a crimson red that is very hard to get, and dye your armor set that way, and it'll really sort of let you show off the thing you got going there. And that's also nice to play in co-op, or even if you're doing PvP. Last but not least, weapons progressions. And here you have a concept on the top. We're showing the one-handed axe, going from very, very simple to a little bit more ornate and fantastical. And usually what we're really considering about this is on the bottom you see the 3D models that match those concepts. What's important to us at this stage is that all the way on the most simple axe, that it reads as a very simple axe. There's not a lot going on. And then as you progress further and further, it feels like you're really upgrading this axe. You're really getting more power and more bang for your buck. In between the choices, we're not so worried about progression necessarily. Mainly what we're worried about at that stage is to make sure that it feels interesting and varied, so that as you're leveling up throughout the game, you have a choice to sort of try out different things and see if they're fun and if they feel right, and even to see if they match your armor set maybe, or things like that. The other thing about these axes or the weapons in Diablo 3 is that we make sure they're themed, and we sort of have a penchant for trying to make sure that maybe they look a little bit more evil or maybe a little bit more nice, and really want to give you guys a lot of bang for your buck when it comes to that. And we do this for all the armor. Like I said, this is just the one-handed axe as an example. And that pretty much puts us to crafting with Jay. Thanks.
All right, so the sad truth for us designers is that when you work with a system that is completely random, like the Diablo loot system, sometimes it fails. So the question is, what does that mean? And for us, how does that make our lives difficult? Well, randomness is completely unpredictable. If you go through an entire dungeon and you do not get a single weapon drop, the loot system didn't fail. There's not something wrong with our random number generator. That's the system doing what it's supposed to do. Sometimes you don't get what you want. So the thing that we need as designers is something that we can rely on for the case where loot does fail. So for the original Diablo and Diablo 2, that was vendors. If you didn't get a good weapon or a good pair of boots, you could always go to a vendor and see what they had, and they would have something that is good enough, better than what you've gotten in the world, that can kind of fill in the gaps. We don't care if the player gets like really awesome loot, like, you know, if they get a streak and, you know, jackpot, that's great. But if they don't get good loot at all, that actually can make the game overly difficult and not fun, especially early on. So the purpose of our crafting system is really artisans are vendors 2.0. We looked at them and felt like we could do a lot more with them, that we could have a lot more robust system than just filling in the gaps. So I'm going to introduce you to all of our artisans. This is the Mystic. So the Mystic crafts wands, staves, and other kinds of magic items. She can also enchant items, and she can identify items. So, and then our next one is the Blacksmith, which we've kind of shown before. He crafts armors and weaponry. Adds gem sockets. So basically, if you have an item that doesn't have the ability to put gems in it, he can actually add sockets to it so that you can. And repairs items. And now that you've seen kind of two of them, also it's good to point out that when we created these characters, we were really focused on making real people. You know, they're not. We tried to not make them generic. They're very distinct. They have strong personalities, and they have a lot of opinions about the world they're in, how they view, you know, Sanctuary, how they view you and your actions. So it's just one more example how, even in small ways, everything we touch, we try to permeate the game with story. So, and this is a great example. The jeweler, a greedy old man, he crafts rings and amulets, combines gems together, and can desocket gems. Basically, he can take an item that has gems in it, and for a small fee, he can pull the gems out of it. So, and that preserves the gems and the items. So you can always feel free to socket your gems in your items and use them. Was one of the things we loved, the idea of kind of combining gems together and collecting them. That was really prominent with Diablo 2 gameplay, but we didn't like that it made you not want to use your gems. So we want you to use your gems, but we also want you to collect them and upgrade them. That's also why the jeweler can combine gems and make higher quality ones. So exactly how many gems? A lot. So there's 14 gem levels. This shows basically every gem that can drop in the game, but only the first 5 levels actually ever drop. So up to Radiant, every level past that can only be made by the jeweler. And he does that by combining those smaller gems together. So getting those extremely high-level gems is definitely achievement. Good luck.
Okay, now that Jay introduced you all to the artisans, we're going to talk a little bit about how we interact with them with the interface. Now, as an interface designer, as much as I would love to believe you guys are going to pick up Diablo 3 to gaze lovingly at the interface, I know that is not the case. You guys are there to kill stuff and to enjoy the action. And so the interface should never impede that. It should be quick to pick up, simple to use, so you guys can get about your business of killing things. So with the vendors, the main way we could achieve some simplicity was to maintain consistency. We have here the blacksmith interface, and you can see that it's broken up into 2 main areas. Down the left-hand side are the options, and this will be the same for all the vendors. Anywhere there is a consistent option that they can do, such as shopping or crafting, will always be in the same spot. We really didn't want you to have to learn a new interface just because the vendor offered up different options. On the right-hand side is the chosen option. So in this case, it's socketing for the blacksmith. Also on the right-hand side, you can see that we've added some flavor to the UI just to kind of reinforce what it is that that vendor does for you. In this case, blacksmith, so we have tools of the trade. We have tongs, have a hammer, and the surface looks a bit like an anvil. And if you were to compare that then to the mystic, you can see that the options stay the same down the left-hand side, but the right-hand side, the flavor changes. It's just any way we can help infuse some personality, even in the interface, just to kind of remind you who these people are. Now, crafting is something that we're going into in a different angle this time with Diablo 3, and we're pretty excited about it. It's a new system, and with that comes a host of problems. And I'm going to kind of go through the process a little bit just to show you how we make the interface. So the first stage is an early mock-up. What you see here never made it in-game for any kind of testing, but it helps to sit down with design and go over stuff and make sure that it's hitting all the information points that they want to get across to the player. So you can see there's the listing, there's a picture of the item, next to it are all the material requirements, the crafting button shows you the time, the cost, and at the very bottom we wanted to have a queue so you could do multiple items at once. After we kicked it around a little bit and design looked it over, we realized that the item listing was just too detailed. I mean, sure, it had everything that you needed, but it was just too much. And because of that, you could only show 4 items at a time. And we really found out that through playtesting, people don't like scrolling and they don't like paging, if at all possible. So here, taking all the notes we had, we go back and take it for a second test. And this is the first one that made it into game for the team to test out. You can see we took off the requirements, the material requirements per item, so now we're able to get 10 items per page as opposed to 4. It's a good thing, less paging. The queue is still down to bottom, and we thought it would be awesome to have this big tooltip in the middle that gave you all the information you wanted, and that's great and all. It does what we wanted, but from playtesting, it just came back, the feedback